welcome to episode 25 of Disc and Dice. My name is Paul. I'm here as usual with my co-hosts Timmy and JT. How are you guys going this fine evening?
I'm doing very well, thank you, Paul. How about you, JT?
Sweating my unspeakables off. It's very hot here in Adelaide today, as Paul would know.
Yeah, it's
what it's like in Melbourne.
it was I don't know. I heard varying reports between 38 and 42 degrees. Either way, that's really hot. So yeah,
I saw my grandma. She said it was 48, and she was lying. She was just lying to me. It's like, shut up, grandma.
she's already got one foot in the grave, and she's talking to you from the bad place, evidently.
Did we get your weather?
Nah, other way round.
Other way around.
So,
Okay.
So you guys are like 38 to 42 today, and I am getting like 39 tomorrow. So thanks
enjoy,
for that,
sucker.
you jerks.
Yeah, right. Well, that is fun. So yeah, that's the weather. But obviously, we are a gaming podcast, and yeah, guys, what a couple of weeks it has been for game releases. I guess it's that time of year, and we don't do news really, but there is so much stuff that has come out. Some of it we will be talking about this episode, but there's so much of it that I don't think we can get to all of it. But you know, new Star Wars, new Pokemon. A couple of weeks ago, we had Outer Worlds and oh my gosh, new Age of Empires. There's everything.
I forgot about Outer Worlds, man. It's too much. I like really want to play Luigi's Mansion 3 as well.
Right.
Like
yeah.
that's been so high on my list, but then it comes out like the week before Pokemon, and then at the same time, like Jedi Fallen Order is coming out. I'm still trying to finish Control. I kind of like am interested in Death Stranding. Like a little bit. I want to play it to get. I feel like you got to experience it for yourself. I'm getting sucked into the vague hype.
I've heard playing it is exactly like kissing Hideo Kojima. Basically the same thing, right?
Well, you got to try it, you know.
Yeah, I think Timmy's comment still stands 100% in that case.
Yeah, like, and I guess it's like I was so pumped for Outer Worlds. Like, I have been waiting for that game, and I couldn't get it straight away. But I was just like watching reviews and talking to you guys about it, and like heaps keen. And there's so much out right now that I literally forgot about it until you just mentioned it. Then, like, it's only 2 weeks old, and it's gone from my brain.
Us poor consumers, what are we meant to do with all these options and fun? I don't know.
Right.
Disgraceful.
Although, like, you know, I was talking to a friend of mine about this, someone you guys know, about like how paralyzing choice can be. That I know it's kind of like, oh, it's so good, we have all this stuff, but it's like, part of me is like, I wish we had less. Like, I wish like there were half of these games, because the reality is I'm probably going to play less of them now because there are too many to choose from, and I'm just going to end up like resubscribing to WoW or something because it's too much of a difficult decision to choose one of these new games.
And then like Disney have not helped the situation by launching Disney Plus like this week here in Australia. Like, as if we didn't have enough choice, now we've also got every single Spider-Man cartoon since the 1960s to choose from. And like that's going to cut into my gaming time.
You got to find something that you can like watch Spider-Man and game at the same time, I reckon, to make that work.
It's crazy because it's sort of going full circle. It's almost going back to what Foxtel is. But yeah, anyway, that's not games, so we won't go down that path just yet.
That isn't a game. But speaking of all these new games, I have been playing. Well, I guess the title of this game is Star Wars: Jedi: Fallen Order. I think it's something like that. Yeah, I've been playing the new Star Wars game that came out last week, and I'll say a little bit about it this episode, but we're hoping to actually do a Disc and Dice expansion on this one. If Timmy gets around to playing it in the near future, then we'll probably do one of those and do a deep dive into that game, talk about spoilers and everything. But yeah, I'm about a quarter of the way through it so far, and in terms of general impressions, I'm really enjoying it, but it's a bit rough. I really like the combat. It's people say it's kind of like Dark Souls. I've never played a Souls game, so I couldn't say if it is. But I really like that the combat is much more involved than a game like Force Unleashed, which people might have played as a similar kind of third-person Star Wars action game. Timing matters a lot. The game is quite difficult if you just kind of mash buttons and charge in swinging your lightsaber, then you are going to die pretty quickly, and you don't have like regenerating health or anything like that. You have quite limited health packs to regain health. One of the methods for healing means all the enemies respawn, so the game is generally a lot more difficult than I had expected, but I'm really enjoying that because you have to be a lot more strategic in how you approach fights, and I find
So
myself a lot of the time kind of sitting off, like waiting to dodge, like learning the patterns of enemies and things like that, which is really enjoying. It's really rewarding as well, when you kind of figure out like this is how I deal with this specific enemy, then you feel much more of an achievement than just sort of, force push everyone back and then throw your lightsaber and everything.
So it's not like the Force Unleashed in the sense that you kind of just cleave through a bunch of enemies and just keep pushing forward and forward that way.
No, it's very much not like that, which surprised me. From those early gameplay demos they put out, I felt like it was going to be just like that, but it's much more kind of grounded and realistic, if we can say that for a Star Wars game. Like you are not sort of like, there is a bit in Force Unleashed 2 where you literally pull a Star Destroyer out of space down to a planet with the Force. Like, there is nothing at all like that in this game. It's much more kind of grounded. Like, you can kind of, push and pull with the Force. I'm not all the way through it yet. Like I said, I'm only about a quarter of the way, but from what I've heard about it as well, it doesn't sort of ramp up into like a crazy power fantasy. You're sort of you play as a Jedi who is quite young and inexperienced, and he's kind of remembering and relearning how to use the Force. So you're not sort of taking on the whole empire and destroying them all with your incredible powers. You're fighting like 3 stormtroopers at once, and you have to be kind of careful about how you do that. So I'm really liking how it feels in terms of like tone and pacing like that.
It feels more in line with what I imagine the Jedi experience to be like being methodical and like having patience, and like they're kind of like, although they can move quickly and react quickly, and the lightsaber fights can seem quite chaotic, it is still like, they say it's meant to be more like fencing or like dancing, right? Like you know all the moves and like you're just reading ahead, and kind of what you're describing there sounds much more like that than The Force Awakens, which was run in and throw your lightsaber and it spins around and it kills everybody and then comes back to you, and meanwhile you're electrocuting somebody else with your other hand and rolling out the way while you're doing both of those things already. So this seems more in line with what I would imagine being a Jedi would really be like. So I guess again, trying to ascribe realism to Star Wars seems silly, but like I get what you're saying with that.
Yeah, that's exactly how it feels. It feels like that. It feels like, I guess games always find a way to start you with nothing and then slowly give you skills over the course of the game. And I think this game does a really nice job of kind of meshing that well with all aspects of the game. So in terms of like the story and the gameplay and everything, that you slowly learn your Force skills as the character in the game is slowly relearning his Force skills. You as a player are slowly getting the Force skills, and because of the difficulty level, you feel like you are slowly getting better. It all kind of fits together really nicely and kind of delivers on the sort of experience it's going for.
I guess that's pretty common for games, right? Like, even when you play like a Batman game, most of the time they need to find a reason why you don't have all your gadgets at the start of that, so they can kind of return them to you, or you can activate them piece by piece. But it's funny for a trope that is pretty common in a lot of linear narrative driven in games. It's something that is often not done very well. So
yeah, there's often a lot of games do that thing where you play like the first level and you have all of the powers, and then they take them all away from you, and then you spend the rest of the game getting them back. And I always find that to be kind of, I know it's supposed to be like a tease of where you get to, but I find it just kind of unsatisfying that that's kind of the cliched way to do it. But I really like the way this one doesn't do anything like that. I think it was Force Unleashed 2 that the first level you play as Darth Vader. So it's basically the same thing. Like, you're the most powerful, Force user in the galaxy for the first level, and then for the rest of it you're not. And this kind of starts you out as nothing, and you're slowly building up, and it's a really nice kind of ramp up.
I guess the question will be like, if this game is successful enough to warrant a sequel, whether they will find a way to depower you again. Because where do you go if you start with all the powers that you'll have at the end of this one, I suppose? And like, I would hope that developers can find a story reason or something to still have stakes without just going, and you've forgotten your powers again, But no one's kind of solved that problem yet.
I feel like in the Star Wars universe, this template has sort of been made in the past through, I think, probably some of our users would remember them. I know Paul probably would, but the Jedi Knight games.
Yeah. It's very much in that mold, this game, rather than Force Unleashed.
Yeah, so sort of that mixed with a bit of Tomb Raider or Uncharted, I've heard it being compared to in terms of the type of gameplay, but with maybe some of those that Star Wars feel from those games, which I think is pretty liberal back then. I mean, I love those games. I think they still hold up pretty well today as well.
Yeah, that's interesting you bring up the Tomb Raider Uncharted stuff, because that's the other thing I wanted to say about the gameplay is that it has a really, really nice mix of combat and exploration. This is probably my favorite thing about the game, that I really don't feel like I'm playing an action game. I feel like I'm playing I don't know, I feel like I'm just playing like a third person game where sometimes there is combat, but combat is sort of infrequent and comes in sort of sharp bursts, but then there'll be a long section of climbing or puzzle solving or just sort of like walking around looking at things and stuff like that. And I really hope that continues throughout the whole game.
Yeah.
I hope they don't kind of ramp that up for, I hope the end game isn't just like wave after wave of enemies, because they've really nailed the mix at the moment, kind of like the way the Uncharted games do in a similar way. And there's a lot of exploration. The game is not linear, I wouldn't say. You kind of have open levels. It's not open world or anything like that, but each level is quite open, and there's a lot of stuff that you can't do the first time you're there, and you have to come back with new abilities to kind of unlock and explore, which is a really cool idea, I think. So that balance of combat and non-combat stuff is really good.
That was where I was gonna head next, because I'd heard the Uncharted thing, like the comparison, a few times once they released gameplay, and there was like a big part where you're climbing a moving AT walker, and then there was other levels where you kind of like almost stealthing it and crawling about, and you can engage when you like, sort of thing. So, and I love the Uncharted games, and to a lesser extent the newer Tomb Raider one. So I was very interested to see if that is just how it seemed in the trailer, or if that feeling flowed through. So I am glad to hear that. But it begs the next question. I know you're only a quarter of the way through, but how are you feeling about the narrative and the character stuff and the way that's being delivered? Because for me, Uncharted have the edge over Tomb Raider because the narrative and the character stuff is so natural and flows so nicely. It feels so real, and the voice acting helps with that as well. And it means that Tomb Raider, as good as those games are, always feel like they're not that good just thanks to the existence of Uncharted. So being that this game has those similarities, how are you feeling about that other stuff that we've seen done so well in those games?
If we're comparing it to Uncharted, I'd probably say Uncharted does everything better than this game, but that doesn't mean this is a bad game. It just means Uncharted is an excellent game. In terms of the narrative, it's better than I expected. I'm enjoying it so far. It's relatively straightforward, but like I don't want to really say any spoilers about this. Obviously, one, because we don't want to give away any spoilers here, but two, because we're planning to do this kind of extended expansion episode about it. But the premise is kind of interesting. The premise is interesting because the game is set after episode 3 and before episode 4, and it is set after the purge of the Jedi, like Order 66, which happens in episode 3. And the premise is interesting because we all know how it ends. So it's sort of, obviously the characters in the game are trying to do various things, but there are certain things in it that we know they can't possibly succeed in doing because we know what happens in the original trilogy. And I'm really interested to see where that goes. It's like it's in a kind of a nice spot where I'm kind of quite intrigued by the story. I'm interested to see where this goes. And the thing I'm liking about it is it doesn't rely too much on fan service, so far at least. The thing that sort of springs to mind here is Battlefront 2, which I don't know if you guys either played or watched the single player campaign of that, but they made a really big deal about how that was going to be like the big single player Star Wars story that everyone had been waiting for, and it just lent so heavily on movie characters that every level basically just teamed you up with Luke Skywalker or Lando or Han Solo or something like that, and you just play through the level with them. And this one so far has had none of that at all. There's been one appearance of a character from Rogue One, which is not a spoiler if you watched any of the promotional material for this game. But besides that, there's nothing. There's no attempt, at least so far, to have like Vader chasing you down or anything like that. The callbacks to Star Wars material are all quite subtle. A lot of them are to things like the animated series and stuff like that. So at the moment, I'm liking that it's kind of standing on its own. It's not relying on that other stuff to kind of resonate with people. Having said that, like you say, only a quarter of the way through, so we will have to wait and see how that pans out. But I'm hoping it continues as it's going. Things are good so far.
Yeah, that sounds very promising. I was going to ask if there were any tie-ins to, say, the Clone Wars or Rebels, being that they were kind of floating around that same era.
Yeah,
but I'm glad to hear that we're not just getting tons of fan service. That gets me a lot more excited for this.
yeah. Like I said at the top though, this game is not without its problems. And the worst of those is probably the performance of the game. Now, I'm playing on an original Xbox One, and to be quite honest about it, the performance sucks. Like, I get frame rate drops very, very often. Texture pop-in is pretty much constant. I was watching a couple of videos about this the other day. People might know the site Digital Foundry, which is kind of like the go-to website for comparing performance in games, and they had an article about the fact that on old consoles, like the original Xbox One, the game only runs at 720p because it can't run at 1080 on those consoles. They're just not powerful enough. And this kind of stuff has been pretty widely reported, that the game has some pretty bad performance issues, especially on those older consoles. It really does seem like it's not well optimized to work on everything, and it's the first time that I've felt like you're really supposed to have an Xbox One X or a PS4 Pro to play this game. And that's a bit disappointing, you know? Like, the whole selling point of a console is you don't have to worry about that stuff. You don't have to think about, like, do I need to upgrade my video card for this to run smoothly? But this game is, like, it really suffers a lot of the time playing it on an original Xbox One. So I'm kind of interested to see what yours is like, Timmy, because I imagine you're playing it on just an original PS4.
Yep.
Yeah, so that stuff's been disappointing, to be honest.
Well, I kind of had a similar experience with Control, and again, I chatted with a few people, and they said that they'd heard that Control does a similar thing with some frame rate issues and whatnot. And for me, when things are really popping off in that game, it does glitch a little bit. It's not prevented me from enjoying the game, but it's happened enough times to warrant mention. And so, yeah, like until maybe the last couple of months, I'd kind of been in that camp, being like, well, sure, I'll get a PS5 when it comes out because I want to keep playing the new releases. But like, how much of advance is needed, or is there really going to be? And I guess we're starting to see it in these games that developers are coming out with, that they have the capacity to make them look great and have a lot going on. And the systems we have, which don't seem behind the times at all, can't handle them anymore. So it's interesting. I don't remember that really happening before, like the 4 came out, like playing on PS3 or Xbox 360. I don't remember games starting to come out that those consoles could no longer handle very well. But
No,
maybe I'm looking back with rose-tinted glasses.
I think those consoles didn't have new versions that were significantly more powerful So you've like the X and the Pro, they're like they can do like 4K. Like they're kind of like they're like a half step to a new generation, and I don't think that's really ever happened before. So I guess the thing is now is these kind of games at the end of the generation, they're being made to take advantage of those consoles rather than the ones that we have. So that's kind of a new thing. In terms of the other stuff that I was not enjoying so much, it has a kind of frustrating checkpoint system, which some people will probably really enjoy because of the difficulty that it adds to the game. I really haven't. Basically, you have meditation circles that you find, and when you get to them, that's the only place the game saves, when you find a meditation circle, and sometimes they can be quite far apart. So if you find one, play for 10 minutes, and then die just before the next one, you're put back at the last meditation circle and all of the enemies respawn. And
Sounds exactly like the bonfire system from Dark Souls.
right,
Yeah.
that is what I've heard. Again, I haven't played those games, but I've heard they're basically taking it straight out of that. And I guess in Dark Souls it makes sense because the game is just made to be difficult. And like, I don't know, maybe someone playing this who is in it for that really appreciates this. I don't appreciate having to replay 10 minutes of gameplay like twice just because I die at the end. It led to me turning the difficulty down at the start because like I really like the combat, but I don't want to backtrack through 20 minutes of gameplay just to redo it. And so I turned the difficulty down. I ended up turning it up again once I got used to it because I would rather have this kind of the enjoying challenge of the combat, but I'm not going to have it if that's what I have to do.
Is it realistic to, say it's 10 minutes of combat between the bonfires and it gets pretty hairy? Is it realistic to play 5 minutes of that and then backtrack to the bonfire, or is everything gonna respawn in that time, or is it designed so that you can't necessarily just get back up to where you were?
Okay, so the if you go back to the bonfire and heal, everything respawns.
Right.
So
Okay.
again, like they're not bonfires.
Sorry, yeah. The meditation point.
Yeah, the meditation points. If we go back to the meditation bonfires, if you rest, you get all your health back and your force, but all the enemies respawn. So backtracking and doing that doesn't make any difference. And backtracking and not resting, there's kind of no point because you're already saved at that meditation point. So you may as well just push on. So that's not really a solution to it. It's got a bit better as I've gone on because I think I've just got better at the game. And once I got used to how that system worked, I was a lot more careful about what I did.
Okay.
So if I was low on health, I'd be really, really cautious going into into new areas and things like that. I don't know. I just think the system could be fine tuned a little.
I'm interested to see how they handle the respawning of enemies because, as you said, they all respawn once you go back to the meditation circle. But one of the ways that Dark Souls handled that situation of having to go through all the enemies again, I think, is after you kill an enemy, or at least the fledgling enemies, a certain number of times, I'm not sure if it's 10 times or 20 times or 30 times, they actually stop respawning. So that's one way that I know they handled it. So I'd be interested to see if that's a system that they kind of kept in there. Have you noticed anything like that, or have you heard anything about, when if you kill the enemies enough, they'll stop respawning even after going to the meditation circle?
No, they just keep coming back. The way it works is, if you get killed, when you get back to the enemy that killed you, the first time you hit them, you regain all of your health and force and the XP that you lost. I should add that as well. If you die between bonfires, you lose the XP that you gained between bonfires. God damn it, between meditation circles.
Tainted by Dark Souls.
Yeah. If you die between meditation circles, you lose the XP. But if you get back to the enemy who killed you, hit them once, you get it all back.
Right.
But no, the enemies, they just continually respawn. Like once you rest at a bonfire, they just come back.
Right.
But yeah, the other things I was going to mention just quickly were they're just some kind of like crappy mechanics. Just feels like stuff that I don't know. It's like a half-baked idea. Like there's a sliding mechanic, kind of just like straight out of Uncharted, where your character is just sliding and all you can do is change the direction. Just pretty much any third-person game I feel has this kind of thing. They have one of those, but the controls are just really like inaccurate, and there are a couple of sequences where you'll be like sliding down an ice slope and you have to jump off the end, grab a rope and swing to the other side, and I had to do it like 5 or 6 times just because the controls are really lacking in precision for something like that. And just sometimes there are situations like that where you need to jump and grab a certain thing, or you need to kind of hit a certain point, and there's just a general lack of precision in some of that stuff in the controls. All of this stuff does kind of, a lot of this stuff anyway, feels a bit like the game is maybe released just a little bit too early. And, the cynic in me says that this game had to be out before the new Star Wars movie at the end of the year to like cash in on the hype for that, because I feel like the performance and some of these kind of like wonky controls probably could have been fixed with a little bit more work. And I guess sort of the thing I wanted to say here, going back before, Timmy, to your point about there being a sequel for this game potentially, is that I really, really hope there is a sequel to this game, because I think that the ideas and kind of the core game is excellent. And if it just had a bit more polish and a bit more time to fix up some of these errors and maybe take on the feedback from this game, then I think this is probably the best Star Wars game in years. And with a little bit of work on it, I think it could be a really, really excellent game.
And
So
maybe excellent franchise.
Yeah, possibly, yeah.
So we're talking like you're hoping to see the lift from Uncharted to Uncharted 2, which was, both great games, but 2 is, in hindsight, like an enormous lift.
Yeah. I think good analogy. Exactly that kind of thing. But yeah. So I'll continue playing that, and yeah, all things going well. Hopefully, we'll be coming to you with a Disc and Dice expansion episode that focuses just on Jedi Fallen Order once a couple of us have had a chance to play through the whole thing. But moving on from that, one of the games that has come up just about every episode, I feel like, for the last couple of months is Destiny 2. And for once, we have all played Destiny 2, which is kind of amazing.
Some of us simultaneously, which is a big step up.
Yeah, no, I'm very excited to hear what you guys think, because obviously, like, I've basically been doing a Destiny 2 update every episode for the past 3 or 4, and you guys have just had to be hearing about all the things I'm talking about. So now that you've had a chance to kind of jump in there yourself, have a bit of a play, what are your feelings, your general thoughts to start with?
Well,
I'll let you go first with this one, Paul, because I feel like I might have a little bit more to talk about. But
okay.
yeah, you go first.
All right, okay. I was going to let you go first because I just did all the talking about Jedi Fallen Order.
Yes, that's right.
Fine.
I'll piggyback.
Okay. Okay. My opinions on this are not heaps positive. I think the shooting feels good. Like, it's like the shooting system is pretty like tight and pretty solid. Like the gunplay is really nice. I like that the guns feel quite different. Like, I find often in kind of sci-fi games, you just get a whole bunch of different like laser type guns and they don't differentiate that well, but this one's got sort of really nice distinct feels between like the shotgun and other guns and things like that, which I like. They kind of changed my play style as JT and I were sort of playing through. We played on PC. We played together for a bit on PC, and then I've played a little bit since that by myself. In general, though, in terms of the setting and stuff, I found it very bland, and I have to say that I kind of just switched off after about 10 minutes and started just kind of skipping all the dialogue, and I found it really difficult to kind of latch onto anything in terms of the setting that caught my attention. And in general, I found the whole thing's a bit rough around the edges as a kind of online experience. Like, there's some stuff that is like clearly ported from consoles, and like the UI doesn't work heaps well on a PC, which is always super disappointing. And like, I'm not a big shooter fan, and I'm certainly not a big fan of kind of like online shooters in the sense of like competitive stuff. Not that this is competitive; it's like cooperative. Yeah, I don't know. I guess it was fun to kind of just like switch my brain off and shoot some like big flashing colors with JT. But I don't know. I can't really see myself going back to it, to be honest. Which is real negative, I know, but like yeah, that's kind of my take on it.
I think I can hear a tear streaming down Timmy's face.
Look, it was unlikely we were going to be able to play together, right? I'm pretty firmly entrenched in PS4 when it comes
Right,
to
yeah.
Destiny, but JT, how do you feel about it?
I like it way more than I thought I was going to, and I'm actually really enjoying it. I think it's a good cooperative online game, and even if that means you're playing it on your own, but with randos, as you call them, yeah, I'm really liking the experience. Um, like Paul said, the gunplay is excellent. It's up there with Borderlands, which
Yeah.
is excellent gunplay. I love just the variation and the character customization is really cool. I really like that. UI, as Paul said, I feel is a little bit clunky, and that might just be a PC thing. It's also a little bit overwhelming for new players. Seeing all the different stuff on screen, especially when you're in the tower, is a little bit confusing. Knowing what things are a bounty, what things are a quest, and then sort of figuring that out. But now that I've wrapped my head around that, I'm really liking it. Um, I do. I kind of find it interesting that Paul didn't like the setting because I really like the setting. I love different takes on our own solar system, which is where I guess it is primarily set. And as a bit of a space nerd myself, as you know, I really like seeing the different settings from different planets and moons. Like at the moment, I'm on Titan, running around on Titan, which is one of Saturn's moons, which is filled with oceans of methane in real life. And in the game, they've sort of capitalized that as being a sort of like this oceanic sort of planet. And yeah, I'm really loving most of what I'm seeing in the game at the moment. Not too many negatives past what I've already mentioned, but the experience playing with a friend as well is really cool. I think we genuinely sort of enjoyed ourselves when we were playing. But yeah, I'm not sure if Paul sort of has the same reservations when you're playing on your own.
Yeah, I'm
So
like I to be honest, I would never play this game single player. I can already tell you that. Like I enjoyed playing it with you, JT, and my brother was thinking about starting it as well. And if like everyone is playing, I would probably jump in every now and then. It seems like the game does quite a good job of letting people play together, even if they're at sort of different levels, which I really like. That's something
yeah,
that other MMOs like WoW have not always done so well. Although I think in the very near future they're making some changes there to rectify that. But it does seem like if we were on the same platform as you, Timmy, it would be very simple for us to play with you basically straight away, which is really cool. So I like that it seems like I'll be able to, even if I only play like once a month, it feels like I'm probably able to do that and still play with people.
I'd say so. That's the sort of feeling I got from it. There's no real, you're this level and this is your sort of, this is how powerful you are versus everyone else. I know that there are indicators of that, but I never really got the feeling like when I was playing with other players, I was worried about what they thought of what power I was and what power I thought they were,
Yeah,
or
right.
what I knew they were. That's never really came into it for me when I was playing it, or as I've been playing it. But I know that might change. I'm not sure what it's like, when you're getting closer to end game.
Yeah, I
Timmy
mean,
probably has
like
a bit more of an
you
idea.
can see like there are certain like depending on where you are in the story, there might be like a level marker, or there might be so like a quest marker, or there might be like a strike or a raid, and it says recommended power level. It doesn't stop you from doing that, and if you want to team up with people that have that, you can absolutely do that, and you might struggle a bit, or you can play very conservatively and hide a lot and just try and make do. But yeah, you're right. Like there's nothing that really stops you from doing whatever you want to do in the game. I am curious to know JT, you sound like you had like a really good time with it. Paul, not so much, but you both enjoyed playing together. What sort of things were you doing? Were you like going through the story in order, or were you just kind of like running around, doing whatever you kind of came across and doing patrols and stuff? Was it a combo of those? Were you trying strikes or anything?
Honestly, I think we were just trying to both wrap our heads around the game at the same time. I know we were getting a bit frustrated in some parts where we had no idea what we were doing. Uh, I think
Yeah.
there was that one quest where we were meant to be knifing things, and it wasn't really apparent that that's what we had to be doing. So I looked it up on Google, and then we're like, "Oh, we're meant to be meleeing these guys for
Hey,
it to count as a thing."
was that a patrol that you were doing
I
when you say quest?
possibly,
Like you
yeah.
just
I can't
there
remember.
was it was just like a little beacon that you like activated a mission.
No, I
Because
think it was
I
actually
would
a
say
bounty.
that happens. Okay, well the bounties are explained if you go into your pursuits
Right.
and bounties part
I
of the
think it
menu.
was. I think eventually I think we did find the part of the menu that explained that you were supposed to melee them, but it wasn't clear. We had to sort of go through a couple of levels of menu to get
Okay.
to that, which
Yeah, okay. So I don't know what it's like on PC. Obviously, you open like your menu, and then you kind of have to go to the side a little bit and navigate to the right bounty. But if it was showing up as your mission and you hadn't selected the bounty, it sounds to me like it might have been a patrol, because those are the ones to me that they'll often say, "All right, you need to retrieve data from the Fallen," for example, but they're only going to drop from certain members of the Fallen, and you kind of have to work out if you're in an area with not much Fallen, you might shoot 1,000 kind of like higher level things
What?
before. Oh wait, yeah, it's only when I'm killing the grunts, you know.
Hmm.
Yeah. One thing we really did like was the public little quests that pop up, or the public little
Oh, the public
I'm not
events, yeah.
public events. They were actually quite cool, and I really look forward to those when I'm playing. If I see one on the map, I usually try and run to it, because that's where you're guaranteed to have a little bit of a camaraderie with some other players. A bit of that sense of community and bringing down monsters or what have you. But I
Yeah,
thought that was a really cool addition to the game, and that's something I would love to see in a game like Borderlands. I'm not sure if 3 has it,
Yeah, those
but
are
I really liked it.
those are Shayla's favorite. Like, regardless of what we're doing when we're playing, if the public event drops up, she's over there.
yeah. That stuff reminds me very much of Guild Wars 2. It's kind of like that's how that whole game works. Is like everything is cooperative, and it's just like every quest is just set by area, and anyone who's in the area is kind of helping do it. And
Mm.
yeah, I really like those as well. I like that kind of MMO game design where you don't have to go through the sort of join party steps to do things. It just kind of
Yeah, yeah.
streamlines the process of playing with other people. I guess it does like the downside to it is that it means that no one ever communicates because you don't have to. But but and I guess that's like current WoW has that problem of streamlining the game so much that no one like even thinks or even bothers to get involved with the social aspect. But
Yeah.
I liked it here. I thought it was
I'm-
very good for these what they call patrol things.
Yeah, well, so that's not a. I'm throwing all this terminology at you. Like the patrols are
It's
like
all right, I
in
won't
each
remember it.
area. There's these little beacons that kind of are flashing, and they just start like little missions specific to that area, and they're normally just like collect 10 bits of data, and it's just from killing whatever's around there, and then you pick them up, or it's so. But yeah, I'm glad to hear that you guys were enjoying the public events, because when you are starting out, one thing I found with the lower levels is occasionally, depending on how many people are in the area you're in, those public events can start getting a bit frustrating if you have heaps of people that are like end game, because you're sitting there like slaving away, like killing these things and feeling good about it, and they just zoom through and slaughter everything, and then you're kind of waiting for the next thing, and you start plugging away at that, and then they're back, and because they're just so much more higher power than you. But it's good that you guys are able to enjoy that. Paul, when you come to your next monthly visit to the world of Destiny 2, I would really encourage you guys to concentrate on maybe plugging through a little bit of the story. Not because the story I think is particularly strong, but because I think it takes you to more interesting parts of the level and world design, which perhaps might have more of an impact on you. Given that that's a weak point for you, like it's not gonna like look heaps different, but there have been plenty of moments where I have been like, this is some really cool level design. And it's nothing groundbreaking, but it is the more interesting part of the game to me than just doing patrols and public events, which are great when you're just wanting to grind and get gear and stuff. But I think the story makes the game what it is.
Yeah, okay. I got like a I got like a just such a space fantasy vibe that it kind
Yeah.
of put me off. It was like
Oh,
the game was like it's that like it's proper noun space fantasy. It's like, capital T
what do you mean by
tower,
that?
like capital, like it's all like proper nouns for everything. It's like, this thing is called the tower with a capital T. This place is
Uh,
called the wasteland with a capital W. The enemy is called, I'm making these up. It's like, like the director with a capital D. It's kind of like, I feel like that's sort of it's a bit of a trope in this kind of sci-fi, and
okay.
it just kind of turned me off.
I guess because you read and watch and consume lots of sci-fi, you know,
Yeah,
like you uh, something has to be kind of fairly groundbreaking for it to be new to you, and it means that you're going to be hyper aware of these tropes. Like for me, I found Destiny a really interesting world because it kind of seemed like a lot of the way it feels like you're like a space knight kind of thing, and I haven't played a lot of
yeah,
things when you are that, and not a space knight in the way that a Jedi is, because they're more like space wizards, I suppose. But like the way you have your armor and stuff, and a lot of the armor starts having like horns and stuff, and like real flair, and I don't know. And then towards the end of some of the story in Destiny 2, you're in kind of like it seems like a Middle Eastern bazaar, but it's like stretching over this entire sci-fi planet, and it's kind of like Coruscant mixed with Agrabah from Aladdin, and that kind of level design and world building is something that I haven't encountered a lot, and I thought that was really really cool. So yeah, I guess
I,
it depends what you've seen. I'm sure you've probably come across stuff like that in your time.
I like that we're digging down into the subgenres of space fantasy. We've got the wizards and then the knights.
And
The
never
space
the twain
Aladdins.
shall meet. But speaking of kind of medieval stuff, you guys have been diving back into some Age of Empires stuff, I hear.
That was one hell of a segue. Um, so
Thank you.
so well, JT and I have played a bit of we played a little bit of Age of Empires 2 HD a couple of weeks ago, but I actually picked up Age of Empires 2 Definitive Edition, which is the remastered version of AoE 2. I picked that up last week, and I've I've kind of played Age of Empires 2 on and off for years, basically, especially since the HD version came out. It's been something I always go back to, and so I was like, this was a day one purchase for me, no question about it. And the biggest thing you notice is the graphical overhaul. So it's still like pixel based in 2D, but everything is just higher res. It's just like higher resolution pixel art. It's much much better animations. The buildings actually collapse rather than just going from building with fire, rubble on the ground, which is normal Age of Empires. They actually sort of fall apart and crash on the ground, which is really cool. And it's mainly presentation stuff is what the update is. Like they re-recorded all the music and a lot of the voice acting, and a lot of like quality of life stuff, which for someone who plays a lot like me, this stuff sounds like kind of super boring, but it's so good. It's things like they've updated the game so you can now have queue orders for units, which again, like I'm saying, this is just like the most granular, boring bullshit for someone who's not playing Age of Empires. But now you can tell a villager to build this building, chop down that tree, and then go and mine gold. Whereas originally you have to tell them to do those things one by one. And you can do the same with buildings now. Before, all you could do was queue the same thing more than once. Now you can queue multiple units and techs at the same time, and it just like streamlines the play a bit. It allows you, if you know what you're doing and you kind of know like I need to hit these three technologies next, it allows you to just queue those up and leave it, and you don't have to micromanage so much, which is really good for like I said, if you kind of play it a lot, you notice this stuff. And I think probably the other thing that I really noticed is they've smoothed the difficulty curve a lot. Age of Empires 2, JT, you probably remember when we were playing the other week that there's that huge jump between like standard and moderate that you play against a standard enemy and you just kind of steamroll them. you go to moderate and they instantly are kicking your ass like straight away.
Yeah.
I think, or it's either moderate to hard, one of those two. They like added an extra difficulty and then smooth the whole curve out so that you can kind of go up through those more naturally. Again, this is a lot of stuff that is not, it's not that new really. It's kind of like tweaking, but the game is priced quite cheaply and it looks really good. So yeah, I've been having a great time with it. I don't have heaps more to be saying about it just because it's Age of Empires 2. It's been out for like, God, I don't know how long, like 15 years, maybe more, something like that. So yeah, it's it is what it is, but it's really good.
I think it's cool that you've touched on this now though, just because we're going to be like we saw the announcement for Age of Empires 4 recently,
Right.
so
Yeah.
that'll be nice and fresh when that one comes out, and no doubt we're all going to jump onto it. And whereas I'll be like, this is cool and this is cool, and I think it was kind of like this back in the day. You'll be able to like compare that almost directly.
You mentioned, Paul, just really quickly going back to the enhanced Age of Empires, that they did the voice acting again, or they've updated it. I guess the question on everyone's mind is, did they enhance the walololols? Put a little bit delay on there or something?
As far as I can tell, they're the same. Maybe just like, I don't know. They maybe just like, can you have high resolution audio? Something like that. They just sound a little bit better.
I feel like if they changed all the different unit command noises, it would be this massive uproar from the fan base.
Yeah.
Nostalgia is out the window.
Hey, Paul, I'm the only person that cares about this, as has been touched on in previous episodes. But now that you're back playing Age of Empires 2 and there's a bit more polish in you, you're having a good old time. Have you bothered trying the campaign again?
All right. I am so glad you asked about this. I was going to bring this up specifically for you.
Hey.
So you probably haven't followed this because you don't have a PC, but Age of Empires 2 had one expansion back in the day, and then the HD version has had like 3 or 4 expansions since then from the team.
The original being the Conquerors?
Yeah, right. Since the Conquerors, there's been I think there's been 3 or 4, and they've been sort of really like they've done like a really nice job with it, kind of spreading out all over the world. So it's kind of gone to like Africa and Southeast Asia and stuff like that, bringing in sort of empires from all around the world. And so I think the content in the game now is something like 30 or 40 civs and 20 something campaigns in the game, and all of this is in definitive edition. All of it tweaked and redone for this new version, all with new art. So there is an enormous amount of single player content in this game. So for people who are looking at this, and for the Timmies among us who really like the single player campaigns and strategy games, there is so much here that I can absolutely recommend it. Speaking about myself, I haven't yet, because what I've basically been doing is messing around with just sort of random map games to try out different things to see how things work now it's all been redone. But because it does all feel a bit nicer and it looks kind of pretty, I am planning to do that. And there's so many campaigns to choose from now. I love the idea that you can just look for like a civ that interests you, or kind of a specific bit of history that you're interested in doing, and you can choose that and play it. So yeah, I'm going to give that a go. I'll let you know how it goes.
Do you know off the top of your head if they have a single player thing concerning like the Aztecs or the Mayans?
Oh, that's interesting, because that was added in the Conquerors, wasn't it? That was
cool.
like they were added back then. So I wonder whether maybe they had expansions for them in the Conquerors. I'm not sure, to be honest. I think they added a couple of new civs in definitive edition, but they are based around like Mongols, those kind of civilizations. So it's like Mongols and kind of cavalry-based like steppe civilizations. And a lot of the recent expansions have been things like India and places like that. So yeah, I'm not too sure, but hey, we can find out real easy if we want to.
Yeah, we're literally all doing this on computers, so like asking questions.
Right. Do you guys know?
Can't-
Do you guys know if there's a place I could go on the internet and I could ask a question and get an answer?
What you want is Bing, I
Ah,
believe it's
right.
called.
Okay. Yeah, yeah.
I was gonna say, oh, just pop your Encarta 95 CD and off you go.
The problem with Encarta 95 is you just get absolutely caught up playing the mind maze.
Yes, it's amazing. Oh my god. Can we do an episode on Encarta 95?
Can we
please?
can we do
An
an episode?
expansion episode?
Can we do an episode on like best encyclopedias? Because I like digital. Because I remember I had a Star Wars encyclopedia, and this would have been around the time when the special editions came out. So around like mid to late '90s, and it was all on like CDs. And you had
I
to,
think I remember that.
yeah, I reckon like me, you, and Butters, JT, would have spent hours just clicking through this, reading the entries, and then you could click it to watch a clip from the movie of like this character or this vehicle, but you'd have to switch the CD so it could play the video. But man,
That
that was so
wasn't Behind
good.
the Magic, was it? Was it Behind the Magic?
Maybe it was
I
Behind the
think that was
Magic.
one of them, but it had a whole bunch of stuff. But yeah,
It could have been Behind the Magic. Yeah.
I had a sick, like, I don't know if it counts as an encyclopedia, but it was like this CD-ROM, and it was all just like, it was like an isometric view of San Diego Zoo, and you could click on like the different parts of it, and then like look at the different animals. Like from the like you click on the tundra part of the zoo, and you see like the different animals that like live in the tundra as their natural habitat, and it kind of had like stuff about the zoo itself as well. And like this is mid-90s, so I'm like what 7, and that seemed dope as hell. So,
So
what I'm
cool.
saying is this episode is writing itself, fellas.
It absolutely is. Now, well, all this encyclopedia chat is getting pretty hot, so we're going to take a quick break to cool off, and then we'll be back to talk about some more games.
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 All right, now that we've got all that encyclopedia discussion out of our system, we can get back to something more serious. And Timmy, I think you've been playing another new release or recent release.
Yeah, look at us just like absolutely keeping up with current affairs. But yeah, no, I have been playing Link's Awakening, the latest Zelda of sorts. I suppose it's not a brand new Zelda game, but it is kind of like a reskin, re-release of an old beloved Zelda game, now released for the Switch. I believe the original one was the first Zelda to come to the Game Boy. I think I've got that right. But yeah, Zelda Link's Awakening. This one I bought with a Switch Lite for Shayla's birthday, and she promptly ignored me for like 3 days because she was so addicted to this game, which was a very good advertisement for it. And so now that she has finished that one off, I thought, well, look, I guess I better give it a whirl. So I guess in a way, I bought myself a present there as well. And first of all, it looks really great. I don't know how much of it was like rebuilt from scratch and how much was applying the new appearance to the existing code. I'd imagine they would have had to do most of it going from original Game Boy to a Switch, but it looks fantastic. It's the old school Zelda look where it's isometric. It's not directly on top, but it's kind of still from like above him. Link is the kind of little gnome looking sprite, not necessarily the lithe elf looking Ocarina or Breath of the Wild Link. And I've played probably more of that old school Zelda than anything else. Like I've played Breath of the Wild and a little bit of Ocarina well after the 64 had gone out of fashion. But this is the Zelda that I know, and I'm having an absolute blast. I saw some of it at PAX, and that's kind of made me go, oh, actually, I need to pay attention to this. I've only really started playing it, so I've only played like maybe 2 or 3 hours, and maybe those only because this really doesn't hold your hand. Like Shayla was looking at walkthroughs a fair bit, which I don't think there's any shame in because this does not tell you what you're meant to be doing a lot of the time.
Is that
But
because
yeah,
it's come from that Game Boy era of game design?
I think so. I reckon that's probably it. You know, we've probably spoken about before how games used to be a lot more difficult before the advent of walkthroughs. Like now we're spoiled for it. Games hold your hand a lot more, and you can access anything on the internet. But yeah, this one's interesting because you kind of you wake up, like it starts with like a cartoon animatic of you on a boat, and then you're in a storm, and then you wake up in a small hut, and you walk out of. They give you a shield straight away, and then you walk out of a hut, and an owl kind of floats down and goes, "Hey, you're going to want to have to wake up the windfish, and the way you're going to do that is to get this from the forest." So you go off to the forest, or you can talk to people in the village, and it becomes very apparent that it's like almost like a Monkey Island kind of. You talk to one person and they need this, and so you go to the shop, and to get that from the shop, you need this many rupees. So you go and find a way to get the rupees, and while you're doing that, you find that this person wants the Yoshi doll from the shop, and so you get them that, and then they give you a bow, and then you go and give the bow to to somebody else, and they give you a tin of dog food, but then you give the dog food to a crocodile who owns a shop like on the beach, and it goes like this. And so like it there's got a lot going on, and you can work it out, but it's certainly not going, all right, your mission is to do this. You're kind of just like, all right, where is this leading me? What am I going to do next? And through that you get a sword, and then all of a sudden you can fight things, and then sooner or later you come into your first dungeon, and the dungeon gives you the ability to now you can jump, so all of a sudden you can access heaps more of the world that you had already unlocked, etc., etc. It's very much like one of the old Zeldas, or like one of the old Zeldas, which makes sense because it is an old Zelda. But
yeah, I think this game, the look of it, you were mentioning sort of the graphics before. This is one of the best remaster or remake sort of graphical overhauls that I've ever seen, I think, because it retains, like Game Boy games have that blockiness to them, no matter kind of what they are, just because of how they work, and especially anything that's kind of top down like this, like that old Zelda stuff on Game Boy looks like Pokemon in the same way. It's that same kind of like everything's in little squares. This retains that without looking like it's a technical restriction. It nails that, and it looks like, no, this is an artistic choice. This isn't because it's made on like a 20-year-old handheld.
Absolutely, they do a really, really good job of it in ways like all the trees look exactly the same, so it gives you that kind of like repeating pixels look. But now the trees are like nicely rounded and they look like trees. So like although it looks much nicer, and it looks like a 3D 2D game, like everything's nice and round, and the shading they can do clever things with, so it doesn't look like a flat game of all square pixels. But because they have they've looked at what that game looked like and been like, it's repeating images to make up a forest, and it's like blocky movements when the person's walking. Their legs only have to go left, right, left, right, left, right. They don't have to have a fluid walking motion kind of thing. When he swings his sword, now it's not just back to front, it swings around, but it's still just a very quick movement, And so it's a testament to them understanding what made the game feel and look how it did, and what they can make look better without taking away from that,
Yeah.
That's a really good call out, I think, Paul.
I just wanted to ask, you may have said this at the start, and I was just like zoning out and not paying attention. Are you playing this? You're playing this on the Switch Lite, right? That you bought for Shayla?
I'm playing it on my own Switch now, because I've got a normal Switch.
Right.
I did have a little bit of a play on Shayla's Switch Lite as well.
Okay. I guess I was just.
So what's the question there?
Yeah, what I was getting at was like a little bit of a Switch Lite review, along with a Link's Awakening review. Like, you're playing it on your own Switch. Are you doing it handheld, or are you playing on the TV?
I've been mostly playing it handheld.
Okay, all right.
So the Switch Lite itself is actually, like, this is going to sound really dumb when I say it, it's remarkably light. Like I thought the sides won't come off. It'll probably be a little bit thinner because it doesn't need to have the port underneath it to click into anything. But it is really light. It, like, when you hold it, you go, well, what did they need to put in the other Switch that made it so heavy? Because like this thing feels, it's not flimsy. It's definitely solid, but like the weight of it, you would be forgiven for thinking it's mostly hollow.
Yeah, wow, that's interesting.
Yeah, like it's like my biggest thing with the Switch when they said that like Pokemon is not going to be coming out on DS anymore. We're not supporting it. Switch is the future. I went, well, I'm going to get one because I want to play Pokemon. But the Switch is too big and it's too pretty, and I really don't see myself carrying it around as a handheld device. And I still kind of maintain that. Like, I feel like because it's an expensive console and it's got a nice big screen and it's a little bit weighty, I would want a nice carry case to carry it in. And that's going to take up most of the space in any of the bags I use to take my laptop to work, right? So all of a sudden, it's not really convenient to take on the bus and play on my commutes anymore. The Switch Lite absolutely is. Like, it's a really nice little device. The screen is only fractionally smaller in terms of the actual size of the screen.
Yeah, that was going to be my other question. Is it actually smaller as well as lighter?
So slightly. So if you were to put the Switch Lite on top of the Switch with the controllers on the side, you would be able to see the outline of the normal Switch around it, but only just. So it's a little bit smaller overall. And you know what? I was saying this to you offline. It's so nice, the Switch Lite, having this little unit that is lighter, smaller. I would absolutely buy one just to play Pokemon on and to commute with if the Switch had cloud savings so that I could swap between the Switches. But it doesn't have that.
Ridiculous. It's so ridiculous.
It's got an SD card slot, so I assume I could be swapping SD cards between the two if I really wanted.
Okay.
Well, I feel like we're in the day and age where that's becoming, a little bit outdated.
We are. I guess that the SD card thing is not too bad. Like I was thinking that you couldn't do it at all. I guess that's not like the worst. Because like playing it, being able to play it like on the bus or something like that, handheld, like all the Pokemons have been, would be great. But then once you're at home and you've got like a big TV, I feel like you want to put it on that TV.
Yeah, see, I was kind of wondering if the Switch Lite was going to be like you could, if you had another Switch, you could still plug it into your dock. Like perhaps you can't take the controllers off and it doesn't come with one because it's a Switch Lite. But if you already have another Switch, why wouldn't they let you click it on there, right? Like all the games come, like you would assume it comes with the technology. But I guess that's why it's so light and thin, because they don't need to put that extra stuff in to accommodate that. But unless you got any other questions, back to Zelda.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, cool. So I'm really enjoying the gameplay with this one. It's kind of slowly giving me all of the different abilities. I've got the sword and the shield, and I can jump, and now I can lift heavy things. I don't have like the boomerang, which is a pretty traditional Zelda ability, but I never really liked or used that very much. So I'm kind of enjoying where I'm at the moment. I think the bosses so far in the dungeons are all like a really nice level of difficulty. Like Zelda is a pretty family-friendly franchise, right? Like probably from about like 7 or 8, you can play that game and have a good time.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like all of the bosses come down to like a lot of those old RPGs where you have to work out what to do to beat them. And once you've got that, it's not too tricky. It's more about timing or management of skills. And so I'm having a really good time, kind of like, it's a lot of, you have to employ all of your abilities. So if they just gave you the jump ability in that dungeon, you're going to have to jump whenever the bad guy does a certain thing, and then you can quickly attack him, None of them take too long. Like most of them have kind of like 3 phases where you hit them a couple of times and they get angrier and it increases. If you hit them a few more times, angrier again, and then you only got to get them a couple more times. So it's like it's not too simple, it's not too quick, but it's not just like I'm throwing the thing or wanting to smash a controller and playing the same boss over and over again. It does have that little bit of frustration to make it, you feel like you've accomplished something when you finished it. And more than a few times, I caught Shayla in quite a grumpy mood and saying, this game is shit, and then immediately going back to play it for many more hours in a row. So, like, it's not like a walk in the park, but it is real satisfying. It makes you want to keep trying it, like you can see how to do it, so you want to keep trying. You get so close.
Do you know how long the game is? Because I've never played the original Game Boy one, but I know some Game Boy games can be quite short just because of their Game Boy games. So, yeah.
This one didn't seem particularly short to me. you've got this dial in your inventory of, I think, like 9 items that you need to collect, and then there's like a giant egg on the island that then is kind of like end game stuff that you go and you approach after you've got all of those items. I have collected 2 of those, and like I said, I've played for maybe 2 or 3 hours. There's a lot of other stuff to do in the meantime as well. So I would tentatively estimate that you're looking at like 15 hours, maybe around there. It's certainly like, judging by how much Shayla played it and that it took her a few days still, I would say it's definitely not too short.
That's a good length though.
Yeah, I think
Like,
that's
I'm,
reasonable.
I'm kind of
We've spoken about this. We're never in the, unless it's 80 hours, I'm not going to play it for an RPG. I feel like, tell the story you want to tell. You don't need to just pad it out with endless grinding. And Zelda isn't a levels game. Like, you don't go up levels, so the grind is non-existent in this game. So I think that's a really reasonable runtime.
right. Yeah, I'm kind of like, I'm coming around more to about that kind of playtime. Like, none of us have played this game, so we can't really say too much about it. But I've heard that the Outer Worlds is a similar sort of length, about 20 hours, and I really like. Again, we should probably play it before we talk about it. But I really like the idea of a choice-based game, which I know this Zelda is not, but a choice-based RPG about that length. Because one of the things about these games is like, you can replay it and it has a totally different outcome. I'm not going to replay like 200 hours of the Mass Effect trilogy just so I can see if I get a different ending. But I will replay a 15 or 20 hour game if things can change. So I'm kind of like, I hope more people kind of try that out, like make it a bit shorter and really encourage a replay.
I probably still won't even replay like a 15-hour game, to be honest, unless it's like, I mean, like, the only game that I have replayed more than once is BioShock, and you can't even get a different ending. It's just like, I love that game so much; it's so important to me. But yeah, I have heard Outer Worlds is, you know what, the way I've heard about it is people complaining about it being too short, and then they told me how long it. Then they told me how long it was. I was like, that sounds fantastic to me.
Yeah.
Like, it's I know that you and I agree on this, Paul. Like, you should make something as long as the story requires, not go, well, this needs to be longer, so stretch it out, or we need more like episodes. We have a 13 episode order and this story is 10, so stretch it out. Like, if we're talking about TV shows, you just, there's no need to go longer than the story wants. And if the story's satisfying, I don't care if the game's a 3-hour game, right? Like, a lot of those walking simulators kind of get really like ragged on for being short, but it's like, that's what the game is.
I always like to finish a game, and people talk about, I'm going to replay it and do this, this, and that. But I like to just finish a game, and that's like my canon of the game. That's my character's canon, and it's finished.
Yeah, that's pretty much you're very much a disc and dice podcaster. 'Cause me and Paul have spoken about this frequently. That like with The Witcher, even if that was shorter, we've spoken about how no, this is what The Witcher story was, and my ending has been different to Paul's, and yours was different to both of ours again. But it's like, no, that's what happened, and that's the story of Geralt, and I don't need to go and look at the other endings.
Yeah, I think for The Witcher that makes sense. I guess like if I'm thinking about it like something like The Outer Worlds, where you get to create a character, I can see it being interesting if the character you play is different. So I could play the game as one character and make choices, and then play a significantly different character in terms of like appearance and skills and everything, and do different things. I like the idea of a shorter game that encourages me to do that.
So we got on a little bit of a tangent there, but back to Zelda for just one more thing. One thing I found really interesting, and this is going based on Shayla's playthrough, is I was kind of like watching her play here and there, and I noticed that it was all Link, and there was no castle, and there was no rescuing a princess or anything like that. And so I asked if there was any actual Zelda in this one, because obviously, the main character in this franchise is Link, but it's always related to Zelda, as she's either sent you on a quest or she's been taken or whatever it is. Um, there's no Zelda in this one at all. It's not even like there's no interaction with Zelda, but she's still the regent of this area. She's never mentioned. She never makes an appearance. Nothing you're doing is for her. You're just washed up on this island and kind of helping out with the whole situation and trying to get off of it again as well, which I thought was interesting. I haven't played that much of the Zelda franchise. I played A Link to the Past on an emulator. I have played some of Ocarina, and I have played kind of the other DS ones, like the Phantom Track,
Hourglass.
Phantom Hourglass, and the Wind something. And so, I don't know how many of them don't feature Zelda, but I thought, she'd make an appearance in most of them at least. So,
Yeah, that's cool. I like
But
the
yeah.
idea of that kind of thing. I want
I don't mind. I don't mind a bit of variety.
Yeah, I want the Star Wars media property without a lightsaber.
You know what? Me too. Me too. I guess we'll never know now that the Game of Thrones showrunners don't get their Star Wars property.
But we were talking about long or short RPGs before, and speaking of really long RPGs, I have finally got around to playing one of the Witcher expansions, which
Welcome back to Australia, Paul.
which I've had kind of sitting on the shelf, figuratively speaking, for many, many months now. I think we've mentioned this before on the podcast, but I don't care, I'm saying it again, that it's kind of nice to have some more of The Witcher. As much as I feel like I'm missing out a little bit by not having played everything that's been released for that game, I do also kind of like the fact that it's not done for me yet.
Dude, I'm
it's
so
not
jealous
finished.
of that. Yeah, the fact that you got to play all of The Witcher and absolutely love it and savor it and talk about it with us on this podcast for 2 years while you couldn't play it, and now you're back and you've got more Witcher to play.
Exactly.
It's the dream, man. You're gonna be able to, at this rate, you were gonna be able to play Witcher right up until the Cyberpunk release, and then you just get to keep playing CD Projekt Red.
I was saying that to a friend a couple of days ago, actually, that this will be perfect timing for me to go straight into Cyberpunk.
It's like when I played the Uncharted trilogy for the first time, and I finished a month before Uncharted 4 came out, and I just got the whole story in a nice little 2 to 3 month period, and it was so lovely.
It would work well like that, because those games just play like a movie. So
yeah,
that's
absolutely
basically what it was. But back to Witcher, I've played Heart of Stone, so the first of the Witcher expansions. In short, they're incredible, of course, because it's The Witcher. And it was just really nice, kind of going back into that world and remembering how great it all is. I wanted to just walk everywhere rather than fast travel. So if it was sending me from one point high on the map all the way down to the city of Oxenfurt in the south, it's no, I'd get on my horse and I'd trot the whole way there rather than fast traveling, because I just wanted to look at the world again. But yeah, I don't have too much to say on this. Like we kind of said, we've said a lot about The Witcher over the years, but the story I think is really interesting. It's it's kind of like a combo of kind of a few kind of cliche things. I think it's like a sort of a murder mystery cross with a fairy tale and a ghost story with a heist and a haunted house. It's sort of a bunch of things that you feel might be a little bit predictable, all kind of thrown into this one story, but it all works really, really nicely together. And I want to talk a little bit about the ending without actually saying anything about the ending.
Before we get to the ending, I just want to talk on what you mentioned about the premise there, because I feel like what you said about it being a little bit predictable but a little bit different with the kind of fairy tale and the haunted house and all that kind of stuff, and I feel like it strikes a really nice balance of being quite a little bit unlike the rest of The Witcher, the Wild Hunt game,
Mhm.
but still feeling very much at home in that universe. I think they struck that balance really nicely.
It does. It gets that like the kind of feel you should get from an expansion, where it doesn't just feel like more quests from the main game,
Mm.
but because often like often an expansion for an RPG, if the RPG takes place in a forest, the expansion will be in like a snowy mountain, so that the setting changes, but it will be the same mechanics. This doesn't do that. It's all set in like what is it, like Velen, the area basically surrounding Novigrad in Witcher. Everything takes place there. So it's
Yeah.
not a new zone, it's not new landscapes or anything like that, but it's just, you're totally right, it's just like the tone of it is just a little bit off enough that everything in it kind of fits the atmosphere it's going for. It has a kind of
Yeah.
spooky feel through the whole thing.
It does. It does. It feels, yeah. It feels like a Halloween episode with The Witcher.
It does. It does actually. Yeah.
Yeah, but the other thing about it that I found interesting, and this is only in light of the second expansion, which you haven't got to yet, because when you play Blood and Wine, you're in a completely different area, and you don't really travel back to any of the places from the base game or Heart of Stone. So it kind of gives it a very different feel. And I think that was the right call after doing as much of Wild Hunt as you do and then Heart of Stone. But I feel like they did a good job with Heart of Stone of really making it feel fresh and new without taking it out of the world you knew. And JT, I want to get you to weigh in on this as well, because you probably played these expansions straight off the back of Wild Hunt. And Paul's played them with a massive gap in between, and I played them all on their various launches. So we've kind of got the three ways you could do it. I played Wild Hunt when it came out, then had a few months break until the first DC dropped, and I played it. You played them back to back, and Paul had like a year and a half between playing them at least. And when I went back to Heart of Stone, I was used to being endgame of Witcher and absolutely flying through the countryside, throwing bombs, swinging swords, dropping signs, just kicking everything's ass. And I felt invincible because I got my Ursine Mastercraft armor. I had everything powered up, my Mastercraft weapons and whatnot. And then I was in the Heart of Stone kind of area because it's still Velen, but it's kind of like a little different part of it. And I went up there and there were like wild boars, and I just ran in there and they destroyed me. They were just wild animals that didn't care about me until I got too close, and I just got dropped. And I was just like, oh shit, I have to concentrate again now. And I really liked that, but I wonder, Paul, because you've had the distance, if you didn't have that cocky attitude and you noticed that, and JT, whether you noticed a jump in the difficulty of the the enemies in that kind of the newer areas.
I don't really remember too much having an issue so much with that. I think it was pretty seamless for me, but I was actually playing it on a pretty easy difficulty solely because in The Witcher 1 and 2, I was playing on that absolute hardest difficulty because I wanted the benefits of all the different rare armor you got with playing it on the hardest difficulty. But when The Witcher 3 came out, there was no benefit to that. So I actually played it on a pretty easy difficulty. So I didn't really notice that too much. I'm not sure what you did, Paul, though.
I guess because of the big break in between playing them, I had forgotten a little bit of how the combat worked. Maybe like forgotten a little bit of that sort of muscle memory as well of how you fight. So I was probably more cautious going into it anyway, because it was sort of like, oh, I got to remember how to play The Witcher. So I would sort of checked how everything worked before I really got in there. So I didn't really have that situation either. The other thing actually that possibly affected it for me was I did everything in The Witcher 3, as in like literally everything. Like I sailed around the seas of Skellige and dived for every single chest that is there that you can pick up. So
That's a lot.
Yeah, so I was significantly over leveled for Heart of Stone when it started. Like the Heart of Stone quests were grey and giving me no XP when I started, and it wasn't until about halfway through that the quests for Heart of Stone got high enough level that I was able to actually get XP again. So I think I only got maybe got like 1 or 2 levels throughout the whole of the game. Throughout the whole of Heart of Stone, I mean. So I think at the start I was quite over leveled for it, so I felt quite powerful.
Okay. Side note: Skelliger is so good. Highlight of the highlight of the base game. But I'm
all about Novigrad, but Skelliger is great.
I took us on a mad tangent. You were about to talk about the end of the game without talking about the end of the game.
That's
so
right.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm not going to spoil anything here for people who are still thinking of playing this, but I just wanted to say something about how nicely the end of this game is handled in terms of role playing. You're given a choice at the end of Heart of Stone, and it is similar to a choice that you get at the end of Witcher 2, which isn't determined by things you do throughout the expansion. So it's not like normal Witcher 3 where there's no choice at the end. It depends on what you did over the 30 hours you played or whatever. But the choice one of the choices allows you to basically skip the entire climax of the ending, but it is so perfect in a role-playing sense for one possible situation, which is how I felt, that I was amazed that the option was in there. And this is kind of, the end of Witcher 2 is kind of similar to this, that there is a choice you can make at the end of Witcher 2, which basically means the game doesn't have a big dramatic ending, it just ends. But if you feel in a role-playing sense that that's what Geralt will do, the option is there. And I love that the option is here for this again. And I also love that the reward for doing that can also be just refused if you feel that, for role-playing reasons, Geralt would do that. And this was perfect for my playthrough, so I was able to basically skip the ending of the game and then say no to being rewarded for anything for finishing the expansion. And I just think that is so fantastic that those options are there.
There is no developer better at exploring the grey areas of morality than CD Projekt Red. And like The Witcher 3 and these expansions are absolutely a testament to that fact. Like, I think we've spoken about morality in games and whatnot, and The Witcher has come up, and it's this podcast, so of course The Witcher has come up. But the way that they have a reward system in a game sense, but then they don't necessarily give you a story reward or outcomes that you think you're going to get. Like, there's no, I'm going to do the right thing because in games this is the right thing to do. There's
Right.
none of that. It's always like, they'll give you an outcome and you might get experience points because you had to defeat enemies during that outcome, but they don't go, and now you're a good guy, or your bad rating has gone down. They do nothing like that. Maybe there's consequences down the track of what certain people think of you, but it's not like this big, like, you're a bad guy and so now your eyes are red, kind of situation. It's like, well, this is a world, and good people can do bad things and bad people can do good things, and people can do nothing in situations that requires them to act. And there's not many games that do that at all, let alone do it better.
Yeah, like I exactly what you're saying, I completely agree with. I found it interesting that the two endings for Heart of Stone are labeled good and bad, and I got the ending that's considered the bad ending for Heart of Stone, but I didn't feel like it was the bad ending. I felt like it was not the good ending. I just felt like this was the right ending for the game I played. That was it, and it really nails that kind of grey morality. Like Heart of Stone does it as good as anything in the actual campaign, better than a lot of it as well. Something I also really liked on what you were saying just then was that in terms of giving you player choice, it does a really good job of not even not allowing you to, but not putting any kind of min-max options in your face when you make those choices. So you make those choices for role-playing reasons, and then maybe later on there's a sword or something like that you get as a result of that. Because I feel like if they said like, do you choose this or this? This one has a sword. This one has a new spell or something like that. It's really difficult in that situation to not weigh that into your decision as well. And they do a really great job of separating like that part of the game from the actual story, so that you're not even thinking about how will this benefit Geralt in terms of the skill points I need to get to the next level.
And to their credit, they set that up so early on with that when you're in the tutorial kind of area, when you fire up Wild Hunt, you're in White Orchard, and you do what is ostensibly the right thing. Well, I did anyway. I turned in this dwarf that had been ripping people off to the police instead of killing him for a bounty as the person who hired you. And the guards rock up and they freaking hang him straight away. And you're like, what the hell? Like, I did the good thing and you killed him anyway. And I think most people would probably do that. Not everybody, but I feel like a majority of people would, at the start of a game, would probably be like, I'm the good guy, so I'm going to do the good thing. And they go, hey, man, the good thing doesn't exist. So I'm sure when you say good ending, bad ending, you're talking about what YouTube or Reddit have labeled them, and not at all what CD Projekt Red considered.
No. If you Google like Heart of Stone ending on YouTube, you'll see like Heart of Stone good ending, Heart of Stone bad ending, that kind of thing. It's interesting that The Witcher 3 is kind of the same, because I actually, before I started playing, I went and rewatched the end that I got for The Witcher 3. Just like, I remembered what happened, but I just wanted to kind of feel that again before I went into Heart of Stone. And they're the same thing. They're labeled as kind of good, bad, and things like that. And again, I kind of feel like they don't feel like good or bad. They just feel like possible outcomes.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, last thing, this is so unimportant, but before we move on from Heart of Stone, I just wanted to ask, when I watched the trailer for Heart of Stone, I am absolutely certain there was this scene in it, and it didn't happen in my playthrough, so I just assumed that like I didn't get it. But I haven't heard about anybody else who saw it, and I'm starting to question whether I was only half watching the trailer, but I've never gone back to check because I kind of like not knowing. But Paul, in your playthrough, in the trailer, I was sure there was this bit where the main is kind of like a, I guess, protagonist, maybe anti-hero of Heart of Stone, Olgierd. His whole thing is that he can't die, right? Like in a normal way.
Right.
He's kind of
that's
cursed.
Revealed very early on.
Yeah. For me in the trailer, he's kind of cursed.
That's true. Yeah, it's in the trailer.
Yeah, so don't worry, everybody. He's kind of cursed to not be able to die. I could have sworn there's this bit in the trailer where Geralt swings a sword and chops his head off, and then he kind of like it's like it flops back. He doesn't quite get all the way through, and then he picks it back up onto his neck and says, "Well struck, Witcher." And like it's so vivid in my mind, but nobody seems to have ever gotten this in the game. Like, do you remember that? Did you see that? Like, am I losing my mind?
No, you remember correctly, and I have the answer. Because I don't usually do this with games, but even though, like we said before, we sort of have, I'll play The Witcher once, and that's my kind of canon for what happened. I cannot get enough of The Witcher to such an extent that I will track down everything after I finish. I want to see like every ending. I want to know how every choice can possibly play out, just because I want all of it. That sequence you get. Do you? This is yeah. You're right. This is so uninteresting for anyone listening. But do you remember the bit where the house is burning and some of his people are about to execute someone?
Yep.
If you really dig in your heels there and try to stop that execution, you will have to fight him, and that is how you get that scene. But if you take other options there, then that doesn't happen. So there's kind of there's a specific sequence of choices you have to make at that point. You'll have to fight him, and it's basically like there's two ways you can find out he's immortal. One is that you fight him and basically kill him, and then he's he puts his head back on. Or if you don't fight him, he gets stabbed by someone else, and then that's how you find out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. That's all quite early on in the game, so no
Well,
real
that is
spoilers there. And like you say, it's in the trailer, so
that is an amazing relief to me. But that was the point of the trailer that really stuck out to me. That made me go, that is interesting. This isn't a monster. This isn't a like we hadn't really had, apart from like the vampires, which are humanoid, but still kind of, you can tell they're very pale and they generally have reddish eyes. It was the first kind of like, this is just a normal guy, and then all of a sudden, like, what's going on here? Like,
yeah.
so cool.
I,
All right,
I
wicked.
really briefly just to mention that the characters in this are fantastic. Like
Mhm.
there's three in particular. There's the guy you're talking about, Olgierd von Everick, and then there's Gaunter O'Dim, the Master of Mirrors, who is a fantastic character. And again, just like Olgierd, is kind of unlike anything that I'd seen
Yep.
before in The Witcher 3. But I no more really to be said about them because you kind of want to play it. And the other one is Shani, who is coming back from The Witcher 1, which was really cool to have that, to sort of see her come back, but to see her kind of in the game with all the technology that The Witcher 3 has, because in Witcher 1, she's there in the game as like a kind of like blocky, polygonal, weird mess of low textures. And it's, it was just like great that she is in Witcher 3 as that big throwback. So I definitely enjoyed that as well.
Absolutely. It's a testament to a not a testament, but it's like the advantage of CD Projekt Red absolutely striving to maintain their independence. I think like they've had such control over all three games in this that they are able to do that and make it so satisfying.
Absolutely. But I think that's going to be the end of our what we've been playing discussion for today, and just about the end of the podcast. But as always, I want to ask you guys what things you're planning to play before the next episode. So, JT, you've been real quiet there while we've been worshipping at the Shrine of Witcher. So
I do that in my private time.
Yeah.
JT's alone time.
All right. So, what's on your gaming schedule?
Well, apart from the ongoing baseline of the Old Republic, which I won't get into too much, I'll be digging my heels, or my teeth, sorry, should I say, into Destiny 2, to trying to get out some of the story content of that and seeing where that goes. I'll be also revisiting some racing games, so namely Forza 6. I know that's an older one in the series, but it still holds up, still looks great, and I'm sort of trying to nibble through at the endurance races of that, which can go for quite a while.
Oh, we should do one of those together, JT.
I think we should, and
because I've done
if
that
we're
a
going to be
couple
getting
of
together
times
on Friday,
people.
we should do that.
Yeah, I've done
Yes.
that before with like some in like, I can't remember which game it was, but some of the ones that had like 3 or 4 hour ones, and
Yep.
that was a really fun thing to do, to kind of pass the controller over every half hour
Yep.
or so.
Yeah, but
Can
only
we-
when you pit.
Can we do one of those when I'm back for Christmas?
That would be cool.
Yeah,
That'd be
let's
cool.
let's do a
yeah.
24-hour Le Mans when you're back.
Triple
And-
naughty Le Mans.
And there is one other game, and I'm not sure if I'm going to be getting into it before next pod, but I'm hoping to. There is a game that's been out probably for under a year now, and it's still in early access, but it's called Chernobylite, and it's a spiritual successor. I don't think it's actually made by the same people who did the Stalker series, but it's still being considered that. But it's an open world game set in the Chernobyl region of Ukraine, which, as everybody knows, is a no man's land, and it's a little bit less
I know. I
supernatural
saw the
themed.
TV show.
Yeah, so that's another one that if I manage to get that before next pod, I'll be firing that up and giving that a go because I've heard good things. But that's about it for me. How about you, Timmy? What have you got on your plate?
So, like Paul mentioned, there's so much on the go right now. Like, I am desperate to play Pokemon Sword or Shield. I'll probably get Shield. Like, that would normally be absolute priority. But for the good of the pod, I'm going to have to get Star Wars: Jedi: Fallen Order.
Yeah.
because we got to do that expansion episode. And also, I feel like that game's probably going to be shorter than Pokemon if we're being realistic.
Yeah, from what I've heard, it's like somewhere around 20 hours, which was probably
Yeah.
longer than I expected.
Yeah,
but
same.
Is still not. I think that's 20 hours if you're going to do a lot of backtracking because there's a lot of stuff that is optional. So yeah, you can probably get through the main story, which is the most important part, in a bit quicker than that.
Yeah, well, so that'll probably be the next thing. I feel compelled to finish Control before I start anything else because I'm so close. But we'll see if I get the chance to get round to it. And of course, I'm playing Link's Awakening at the moment, so I guess that'll scratch my Switch itch for now. So yeah, Jedi, Zelda, Control. There it is.
Done.
Paul, what are you getting up to?
To be honest, I'm not sure if I'll have anything new by the time for next episode. I'm gonna play Fallen Order like you are. I'm gonna be playing some Age of Empires 2. I'm always playing FIFA, so no point really mentioning that. I think maybe the only other thing I might play that we haven't really talked about is Project Zomboid, which JT and I have been getting back into a little bit recently. We may try and put some time into that actually, and we have this sort of problem with Project Zomboid where we play and we maybe play like a couple of sessions and we get ourselves in like a nice building and we're all ready to kind of go and set it up as the base, and then we stop playing. So we're really sort of determined now to play long enough to set up a base and actually go and have some like really good adventures with all the cool stuff we find.
And being an early access game, it is getting constant updates. So, I mean, one of the big bugaboos of an early access game is that it's not final. So when you do stop playing for an extended period of time, enough updates usually roll in that it's worth making a new game to experience those updates, because it usually isn't retrospective to the other games you've had before. So hopefully we can get enough of it in before the next big one.
Yeah, that's the plan anyway. But yeah, that's what I've got planned. So yeah, that's the kind of stuff you should be expecting from us in our next episode. And as Timmy mentioned before, and as I mentioned earlier on, we're hoping to have a Disc and Dice expansion spin-off episode about Star Wars : Jedi : Fallen Order coming to you. Well, I don't know, maybe sometime in the next couple of weeks, I think, is what we're going for. But yeah, that's all the podcast for today. So if you want to get in touch and tell us your favorite digital encyclopedia, you can get in touch with us by email, discanddice@gmail.com. You can find us on Facebook, facebook.com/discanddice. We're at Disc and Dice on Twitter. You know, wherever you want to get in touch, we're always happy to hear from people. If you've got any questions you want us to answer, suggestions of games you think we should play, anything, we're always happy to have you guys getting in touch. So yeah, that's about it. Thanks guys for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for having me again. And as usual.
It doesn't really make sense.
I'm
like
going.
we're all regulars.
I know.
Thank us for having us. You know what? Self-love is important, you know?
It's like living with a housemate, and every time they leave, they're like, thanks for having me. Back in 10 minutes.
You know what? I appreciate you guys. Let's leave it at that.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Well, thank you guys for letting me have you.
Games.
Games.